screen. Okay. So good, I guess it's afternoon now. So good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to our EOF information session. So my name is Randy Mayers. I am joined by my colleague, Mrs. Lakeisha Valon Cortez from the Office of Financial Aid. And so the purpose of this session, see if I can. There we go. So we're going to discuss a few things today. So we may have two different groups of students here today. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But the goal of today's session overall is just to give an overview. I'm not going to go super in depth about EOF, but what our program does on our campus. So what you could expect if you were admitted into the EOF program. I know some students have already had EOF experience. So you may have went to a community college prior to Rutgers and were part of an EOF program there. So we'll talk a little bit about the similarities and differences between those. And then some of you have never heard of EOF or experienced EOF before. So hopefully you'll walk away from this session with a general understanding of what EOF does and how we support our students. We're going to talk a little bit, and that includes the compliance. So that means, what are we going to ask you to do as to be part of the program? And then the bulk of this session is really talking about the application process. And a big part of the application process is financial verification. So we're a state-funded program, which means that we have to make sure that any student that's part of the program meets the financial requirements that the state of New Jersey sets. And that involves financial verification before you're admitted. So basically proving by submitting various documents that you are financially eligible, and we'll get more into that. And so there's a couple groups of different students here today, and I know who will be watching this recording. So some of you are already going through this financial verification process. So you applied a couple months ago, you were quote unquote like opened up for financial verification, so you currently owe documents. So you may be here to get a refresher on how do I, what's a tax transcript, what does this form mean, et cetera, and maybe to just learn more a little bit about EOF or ask any questions that you may have. Some of you have not started verification yet, and you're going to be starting that process in a few weeks because you're currently applying to the program. So for you, this is just what is this process? What is this going to entail? So you're better informed before you move forward, and you can make a decision if this process is going to work for you, if you're going to be able to submit all the documents or not. So we want to make sure that you're well informed no matter what camp you're in, and that we're here to support you through that. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit just about the program. Let me go back. So our program is state funded, as I mentioned. So there's EOF programs all throughout the state of New Jersey, and they all run kind of similarly in terms of support, but each program is unique in its own ways. So I first want to talk about who we are and who the people in our EOF program are. So there's myself. I am the assistant director of the program. So you will largely interact with me during this process, and just in general, any questions that you may have, you're always welcome to reach out to me. And then we have Dr. Marcia Basong, who is the director of EOF, but also is the interim vice chancellor for student academic success. So the EOF program at Rutgers-Camden falls under the Division of Student Academic Success. So we are grouped together with other support, academic support programs on campus. So there's EOF, there's the TRIO Student Services Program. We are with tutoring and the learning specialists on campus, Office of Disability Services, the Student Success Coach Office. All of these offices are a part of our division. So if you were to come into our office in Armitage, you would see a lot of these other offices there in our suite. But, there's myself and Dr. Basong, but really the heart of the program is our counselors. These are the people that you would be interacting with or you would be assigned to once you got into the program. So we have 3 full-time counselors. We have Mrs. Caroline Waters, Mr. Terrence Jones, and Mrs. Sarah Rubright. So their job is to support you one-on-one and that support is going to look different for every single person. So I don't like to define what that support looks like, but generally it's academic, it's personal, and there's also the financial aspect to it, which I'll get to in a minute. But really the heart and the soul of the program is to help support you through your journey at Rutgers. So their job is to help you figure out your not just your classes or help you support in classes like by connecting with tutoring or giving you advice on next steps, but also really just helping you navigate the ups and downs of college. So as many of you know, especially if you're a transfer student and you've been in college for a few years, or if you're a first year student who've been, you got through your first semester, it's a lot. You're here for 4 to 6 years, depending on your curriculum and your time and what that looks like. And there's a lot more that goes into school than just being a student, right? So you're not just a student, you also work full time. Maybe you are a caregiver, you have children, or you care for other people in your household. A lot of our students work, part-time to full-time jobs. So they help you kind of navigate all of that. How are you going to get through school, do well in school, meet your goals, but also be able to balance all of these other things that are going on in your life. And that when you walk away from here in 4 to 6 years, that you've kind of accomplished everything that you wanted to do at Rutgers-Camden, and you're ready to move on to the next step after undergraduate, which could be graduate school, could be going right into a job. Any of those things are going to help you navigate. So it's a really great opportunity. There's, every student on campus has an academic advisor, but not all students have a counselor. And so they're really your point person. So if you had somebody maybe in high school or at your community college or a different place, like a mentor, it was like a coach or teacher or whatever that you really turn to, that's how I describe an EOF counselor. So it's a really great benefit. So I'll talk a little bit more about our program services. So as I mentioned, you have that one-on-one support with your counselor, and that's a really big piece of the program. So you will be meeting with this person regularly. So we require our students to meet with them 1 to 2 times a month, depending on what year you are. But you're welcome to meet with them more. We have students who meet with their counselor every week, just because they feel like that is helpful for them. In between meetings, you also have access to them via email and other ways to connect to them. So if you just need to check in or ask a question, that person is there for you. We also have workshops. So I know if you've been on campus already, you see that the campus in general does a lot of workshops and programs, but we do our own workshops and programs that we have our students attend. And these workshops are really intentional. So they're meant to help you, no matter what class year you're in, help you progress. So if you are like a sophomore or a freshman, we're going to be really helping you acclimate to the campus and start building a network on campus, making those connections, getting involved, getting that, experience, that leadership, and really just building a network of support for yourself. And then if you're a junior and senior, we're going to transition to helping you what are you going to do now to help you as you get ready to graduate? So helping you think about internships and your resume and how to interview for a job and what does graduate school entail and what do you have to do, and helping you kind of figure all those things out so that, like I mentioned before, when you graduate, you are ready and you're ready to go to the next step. So that's what all of our workshops and programs entail. We also are, one of the great things about being in our program is I know that being a student in general, you're probably in flux with information all the time, right? So you get emails constantly from people on campus about opportunities or information that you need to know. And one of the good things about being a part of our program is that we kind of centralize a lot of that information. So we'll tell you what we need to know, but we also find out a lot of opportunities for students. And that could be, going on trips, getting scholarships, leadership opportunities, just from our connections with other EOF programs across the state and just in general in the community of Camden. So a lot of our students really appreciate being able to hear about some of these opportunities that sometimes get lost in all of the other information that gets to you. So we do connect students to a lot of great opportunities throughout their time in college. But one of the biggest things I think is important about EOF here, and if you've never been here before, maybe this is your first semester in spring 22, or it was your first semester in the fall, we're a small campus. So Camden is basically 1 square block. And as a result, EOF is a small program here. If you've ever been to a different school, like if you think of like a Rutgers, New Brunswick, for example, they have 5 EOF programs because their program is so large, because their school is so large. So they have to break it up by school. We have 1 EOF program here. We have about 250 active students right now. And so we're really kind of like a family-like environment. Students are able to get to know each other a lot easier, connect with their counselor very easily, and connect with each other. So it's a really great opportunity, especially if you're transitioning from a community college this spring, or maybe it's your first year and you were like, I didn't really connect with people on campus. This was kind of difficult, considering some classes are online, some are not. We kind of take that work out for you because you're in workshops, you're in these programs with other students. And so it's really easy to make a connection with somebody else. And so I can't, emphasize the benefit of that enough. Okay. So there's all these benefits part of our program, right? But we do require you to do certain things to stay eligible for the program. So one of the biggest things about EOF, and I'm sure why many of you have applied, is because we do provide, in addition to all the support services we provide financial support. So our students receive a grant each semester. It goes towards your tuition and fees. And that grant is given to you as long as you stay financially eligible for the program every year, and also that you complete your EOF compliance. So you're an active participant, right? So EOF is not a financial aid program. It's not free money that you get and that's it, and you just move on. It is an active support program that has a financial benefit. That's how I describe it. Because really, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute when we talk about the grant, the money that we provide is not that much money. It's not going to cover your entire bill. It might help, pad your bill a little bit. It might come as a refund and you use it towards your books or whatever, but it's not a huge amount of money. So if you're part of EOF, it's really because, yes, you want some money, but because you really know you could benefit from the support services. But you can only benefit if you are an active participant. If your counselor will do anything they can to get a hold of you. So our counselors will call you, email you, try to find you on campus. They will do everything they can to support you. But that support is only as good as if you show up on your end, right? So you can easily blow off an appointment. You can easily not attend workshops. You don't have to answer your email or your phone. But if you don't do those things, right? If you don't show up regularly to workshops, you don't connect with your counselor and stay in communication, then we can take away funding from students. We generally try not to do that. We will give you every chance in the world to not have that happen because we know students need money and we don't want to take the money from you. But the program is only effective if you're active in it, right? So we ask that students show up and do their part, just maintain communication. We are honestly very flexible. So we understand that a lot of things are happening, especially with COVID and, working full time and having other responsibilities outside of school. So we understand that things happen. You may not be able to come to a meeting or a workshop. As long as you stay in communication and are constantly working with your counselor, we will work with you. That's all we really ask at the bottom line, is for you to stay in communication so we can best support you. And I think, so you meet with your counselor 1 to 2 times a month, and then you attend workshops, and your counselor will go over all of that with you once you are into the program about what does that specifically mean for you, depending on your class year. And then we are also asking that you meet with your academic advisor once per semester. We ask that because while your EOF counselor will talk about your major, they will make sure that you are in the appropriate classes. They are not academic advisors, so they don't know all of the ins and outs of the curriculum, or if there's any changes in curriculum or requirements, they won't know that. And they're not the ones who certify your graduation. So if you are going to graduate at the end of your 4 to 5 years here, it's your advisors that actually do that, your academic advisors. So it's really important that you're staying in contact with them to make sure that you are meeting all of your academic requirements for your program. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mrs. Valan Cortez. She's going to talk more about the verification process.
Hi guys, like Randy said, my name is Lakeisha Valan Cortez, and I'm one of the assistant directors in the Office of Financial Aid. And I work mainly with EOF population and getting them through what we call a verification process that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So we kind of discussed what EOF is and how it provides financial assistance and support services, such as counseling, tutoring, and developmental coursework. Undergraduate grants can range from about $200 annually to about $2,650 annually, depending on the type of institution or financial need for the student. So these grants are renewable based upon continued eligibility, which usually determined off of the FAFSA application. So at Rutgers-Camden, our award right now is usually about $1,650 annually. That changes a little bit by a few dollars every year. So this amount might be a little outdated, but it's around this amount. So students who have been New Jersey residents for 12 consecutive months are eligible. Students, of course, who demonstrate historical poverty as defined by the EOF guidelines, and we'll talk about that a little further in a few minutes. And as well as adhere to the family size and income cutoffs that HESA sets for the students. And students must be enrolled full-time. There are some exceptions there if a student is in their graduating semester. So these are the guidelines right now for the 2021-2022 academic year. So these guidelines are not set by Rutgers, but set by the state of New Jersey, HESA. And you can kind of see here on the left, it kind of looks at the household size and then what the gross income is. And then something new that recently started in the past few years is that they're also taking into account student and parent assets. So documentation is required for EOF verification. So students wanting to participate in the program have to go through this process, right, called verification. And basically what it just allows the Office of Financial Aid to determine if the student meets the income requirements that HESA has set. So there's some documents that may be requested that could consist of asset verifications. So a student may be required to submit asset verification for two income years, so 2018 or 2019. I know right now we think we're in 2022, but what FAFSA does is they're kind of doing like a prior year. So it takes into account the previous income years. Students will also be required to submit a household verification form. So this verification form is just basically you putting your basic information, your name, your address, and then listing who's in the house. So is it you and parents, you and a spouse, you parents and siblings, you a spouse and children? That's basically what the form consists of. If you receive any type of assistance like Social Security benefits, SSI, SNAP, or TANF, you also have to provide proof of that income. We also require that the students submit tax return transcripts for 2019, or sometimes it could be requested for 2 years, 2018 and 2019. So the tax return transcript is an official document from the IRS that students have to request directly through the IRS. So when you do your taxes, you usually get a copy of what's called your 1040. So in order to go through the verification process, you're just requesting an official copy of your return from the IRS, which supplements that 1040. It's important too that once we start this process and you let the EOF office know that you want to be reviewed for EOF consideration, that you wait to submit documents till we request them from you. So again, the tax return transcript has to be requested from the IRS, right? It can only be requested through them directly. It's an official document. It literally says that it's coming from the IRS, and you can request this by phone, online, or via mail. And this is kind of the steps to outline how to do that. The EOF office does a great job of having a video that walks you step by step on how to get this. And if you need help, we're all here to help you get that information as well. So through your student, your Rutgers portal, you're able to access documents. So whenever a student is in need of financial documentation, or we need to communicate with you, it'll all happen through email notification. So it's important that you monitor your email. If you decide to go through this process, you're going to get an email letting you know that you have missing information that needs to be submitted to the Office of Financial Aid. And so if you go as well out to the scarletthub.rutgers.edu and click on missing documents, it'll ask you to log in with your RUID and password. And once you do that, you can see the items that you're missing. You can also, if it's a specific form, there'll be a link there for you to click on so that you can get directly to the form, and the form will download for you to complete. So higher education, HESA, right? New Jersey Higher Education Student Assistance Authority is the agency that the student will need to supply additional information to if they're looking to be considered for state funding or scholarship programs such as TAG, NJ STARS, EOF. Most students, I know we have a mixture of students here today, but if you are coming in as a transfer student, maybe you received New Jersey TAG before, you may be familiar with your NJ FAMS account and going in and checking your missing documents. If you're coming in as a first-time student or something like that, you may not be too familiar, but most students have to create an account with HESA, and it's called your New Jersey FAMS account. On that account, it'll show that they've received your FAFSA and if they need any additional documentation from you. If the state is requesting additional documentation, it's separate from what you submit to the Office of Financial Aid. So if they specifically need something, you want to make sure that you separately submit documentation to them. So it's a student's responsibility to submit all documentation directly to HESA. So here's some important dates to consider. So Monday, January 10th will be the last day to turn in verification documents to the Office of Financial Aid for those students that are already currently in the verification process. So if you're currently in the verification process, you're kind of aware, you would have received notification already. You would have said, yes, I want to be reviewed for this, for the EOF, and you should by now know what items you need to submit. Wednesday, January 19th will be the last day for those who just applied to be considered and to indicate if you want to be removed from this process and not go through the EOF verification process. Now, the week of February 1st, verification will begin for the students that are just applying and stating that they want to be considered. And then February 21st will be the last day to turn in all verification documentation to our office in order to be considered for the program. One important thing you want to remember that once you decide to be considered for verification and open for financial verification, you must complete this process and submit all of your documents. It's something important to remember because this will keep your aid from dispersing. It can also put a hold on your account and different things like that. So it's important that once you decide, yes, I want to do this process, that you do submit all of your documents so that it doesn't stop you from having access to your portal, your grades, or anything like that. So I'm going to turn it back over.
Thank you so much, Lakeisha. A couple of things I want to reiterate that she discussed that I think is really important is one is just communication, right? So if you are part of this process, you want to go through your verification, especially those who are going to start in a few weeks, the window to get all these documents in for spring is very short because we only have I can only fund students until the week, I think it's like the first week of March, and then I'm unable to provide funding for the rest of the academic year. So those are the dates that the state of New Jersey sets. Because of that, we need time to review documents that you submit. So it's a really short window. You really only have like 3.5 weeks to get the documents in. And so if you are interested in moving forward, you really need to stay on top of it. And it can be very difficult because it's going to be the start of the spring semester at the same time. So it's not just us that you're working on, you're going to be working on your classes and trying to get everything together. A couple tips I would talk about for those students who are interested and want to move forward and will be starting at the end of the month is you could probably request tax transcripts now if you know that you worked in the year 2019. You could request that now. If you're like, I didn't work in the year 2019, I didn't file taxes in the year 2019, I can request my non-filer statement now. If you know that you're dependent on your family and they filed taxes, you can ask for their tax transcript. So there's things you could do now in the meantime while you're waiting for that verification process to start. Honestly, the tax transcript part is probably the worst part of this whole process because it takes so long sometimes. So I will send in my follow-up to all of you. And those of you who have been going through verification have definitely seen this, but there are different ways to get the tax transcript. If you're lucky, you're able to download it directly from the website as like a PDF, and then you have the copyright. But not a lot of students are able to do that because it asks for very specific things in order for you to do that. So most people have to get it by mail, and mail can take a while, right? It can take anywhere from like, up to 4 to 5 weeks to get the transcript. I've seen it take that long. It's gotten a little bit better over the past year, but I know students who've had to take a really long time to get it back. So if you are one of those students that are going to be starting in a few weeks and you're like, I don't, that sounds bad, then we can, you could always reach out and say to myself or Mrs. Cortez, like, this is my situation. I don't think I worked or filed taxes on my parents. So what would I ask for? And we can answer that question. And then you can request those transcripts in the meantime and hold on to them until the verification process starts to submit them. For those of you who are currently going through verification, if you don't have your tax transcripts yet and you haven't requested them, you should do that today and get that process going so we can move forward. If you're currently in verification, that 10th deadline is really important because your semester is coming up, right? The semester is starting in a couple of weeks. If you don't have your documents in, it's going to hold your financial aid and it's going to create a hold. And so we don't want to do that. So that's why we're giving you that deadline a week before classes start. So that you can get everything in and it can get processed. And if anything else needs to be requested from you, that it can get done in a good amount of time. That's the other important thing about this process is sometimes you submit a document and you may need to then submit another document because there's a discrepancy. So if you put something on your FAFSA and then you submit something that is not the same as what you put on your FAFSA, the financial aid office is going to ask you for additional documents to rectify that. So that's why we always say it can be a long process. Sometimes it's really short. Sometimes students submit things and they're done. Other times it can take a while. So the important thing is just to really communicate with us. So reaching out to myself or Mrs. Cortez with any questions that you have while you're going through the process, and we'll help you the best that we can. I say the students who don't have a great time during this process are the ones who don't say anything until the very end. So please reach out. You all have my email. I texted many of you yesterday about this session, so you have that phone number as well, and you're welcome to reach out to me. We also are offering some sessions today, and I think I put it for those of you who are going through verification currently. I just put it in the chat, the link to sign up for an appointment. If you're going through verification and you're like, I have, very specific questions about my documents, I don't understand why it's not going through, or I don't know how to fill this out, you can sign up for a one-on-one appointment with Mrs. Cortez, and she will answer any questions that you may have. And I think all of the appointments for today were booked. I think I checked earlier today, and there's some tomorrow. So definitely give that out. If there's if the appointments don't work for you, just email her and ask her your questions, and you guys can work on that together. If you have not started verification, but you do want to sign up for an appointment, you can if you have specific questions or concerns about the process. So that is available to you. So I highly recommend that you use it, especially for those of you who have not completed your documentation yet. But that's really the main things I wanted to go over. We will provide all the resources that we can and as much support as possible. But as long as you stay communicative, we'll help you as much as we can get through the process so that you can get funded. But now that we are complete, I want to give a minute for anyone who might have questions about anything about EOF, about the financial verification. You can put it in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself. Okay, no questions. That's okay. If you had, I don't know if you're like me, you will maybe think of these questions after we are done, which is fine. You all, like I said, you all have our contact information. So I recommend that you reach out with any questions that you have, take advantage of these appointments. For those of you who have not started verification and are just kind of in this initial application process, I will reach out back to you via email and ask about confirming that you want to move forward. So I want to give you some time to think about it now that you know what the process entails, and if you're going to be able to kind of get through that. Is there anything else, Lakeisha, that I missed? And then in terms of transcripts or anything else, I know I mentioned that if you worked or not, or filed taxes or not, if your parents filed taxes or not. I do know that some students have to do 2018 and 2019, correct? So is that if they've never had EOF before?
Yes, so if a student has never had EOF, has no EOF history, then they will have to submit 2 years, so 2018 and 2019. So if you're going to request your tax return transcripts in advance, like if you worked or if you're a dependent student and your parents work, I would request both years. If you're not sure, then just request both years to be safe. It doesn't hurt. You have them and you just have them for your records. If you didn't want to request both or you wanted us to check, you can always reach out and we can check if you have any EOF history, and let you know, if you'll need 1 year, 2 years worth of income.
Yeah. And there's 2 sets. So the thing that's important about tax transcripts that tends to be confusing for everyone going through this process is that if you're dependent on your family, so your parents claim you or somebody claims you, then they're gonna, you're gonna be asked for their filing status. So did they file taxes or not file taxes? You'd have to provide that. And then for yourself, also the same thing. So if you indicated on your FAFSA that you did file your taxes, then they're going to also request that of you. But if you said not, then a non-filer statement. So it is a lot, and these are all separate documents. We'll talk a little bit more about that in depth if you haven't started that process. I can definitely clarify that more for you. But I did see some questions in the chat, and so Fatima asked, if we are scheduled an appointment, even though we have not started verification, would you be able to tell me the exact documents I need? I know that's a no, right, Lakeisha, because they haven't started verification. So you haven't opened them up, so you're not quite sure. But I know Fatima, you mentioned the tax transcripts in general, you've had issues with the IRS. So I think for you, you can still make an appointment. And you can ask about more clarification about what years of tax transcripts you might have to order. And so you could do that, but I know that you wouldn't be able, Ms. Cortez wouldn't be able to tell you the exact other documents you might need until you're officially open for verification, if that makes sense. How do we send the transcript electronically? So I'm not sure if you mean how do you download it electronically or how do you submit it. So once you start the verification process, we will send you the link to where to upload the document for financial aid to review it. And you will get that notification as well from financial aid on where to submit it. And then there's like a portal that you basically submit it to. If you're talking about the IRS specifically, you can download it, and I will send that information as a follow-up in my email with this recording about how you can go on there and try to download it directly. And then if not, how you can get it via mail, how you can request it via mail. And then Deanna, I emailed you documents. Yes, so hold on to, if you have documents and you haven't started verification yet, hold on to that. I'm not going to submit anything to Mrs. Cortez until you are officially opened for verification, because there are other students in verification right now. So I don't want to give her things that are not necessary yet. And so hold on to them. So if you already have tax transcripts, maybe you already have copies of these things, just hold on to them. And then when you are opened, you will receive a notification, and I will send an email letting you know that you're going to receive a notification, and then you can start submitting. What I also recommend submit documents as you get them or as you complete them. Don't wait. A lot of students tell us like, oh, well, I was waiting until I got all my documents done. You don't want to do that just in case if they need more information. So just submit them as you go along, and we'll continue to work with you. Does that answer everyone's questions? If it didn't, feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat. Anything else? No problem. I know this is confusing, so please feel free to ask us questions. It is a lot, but if you reach out to us, it'll be much easier because we can walk you through each individual step. Okay. Well, if that is it, thank you so much for joining. Like I mentioned, I recorded this session today, so I will send it via email as a follow-up along with some other tips about tax transcripts and things that you can do in the meantime if you haven't started verification. And for those who are currently in verification, just some reminders about how to submit certain documents. And if you have any questions, like I said, please feel free to reach out to myself or Mrs. Cortez, but otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day, everyone.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. If you're an online student, how does the workshop thing work?
That's a great question. So if you are an online student, we do a lot of our programs are currently virtual right now. So you would work with your counselor and let them know, like, I'm not coming to campus, I take my classes fully online, and they would help you identify all of our virtual workshops that you could attend. And you would also could meet with your counselor virtually as well. So they do in-person and Zoom meetings. Does that help?
Hello, sorry, it froze for a minute. I couldn't hear you.
Oh, no problem. We do things both in person and via Zoom. So both your one-on-one meetings with your counselor, you can choose to have all your meetings with your counselors via Zoom, as well as we do workshops online as well too. So you would just work with your counselor and they would get that set up for you.
Okay. So there's online workshops.
Yes. Yep.
All right. So I think I did the verification thing. So I think I just have to do the transcript, get it sent. I do have the financial aid